right around the October 29th-ish area. What that tells me is that you're going to either get a breakout or a breakdown between now and then. You still do see the opposing move on a shorter time frame. So like let's actually go to the 10-minute chart, and what we can see here on the 10-minute chart, I'm going to get rid of this trend line, but if I compare the DXY, look at what we have here, right? So notice how here's your DXY dumping, and then here's your Bitcoin popping, right? And so you see this movement up, and here this. So you do see that opposing factoring out, right? Where the dollar goes up, Bitcoin goes down, and vice versa. The only other thing that you can say, though, is that on a daily basis, if we go back to that daily chart, you don't see that as much. We actually can't see this.
I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Oh, my apologies. I got to
you're okay.
Show that screen. All right, let's go back to it. Let's go back. I apologize. So basically what I was showing here is you can see today alone, this is the 10-minute chart, you can see when the dollar was falling, we did see Bitcoin rally up, and then as the dollar bounced back and went higher, we saw Bitcoin kind of come down. So you do see that, you know, kind of that opposite move going on. But the interesting thing, and you're bringing up a really good point here, is that if we go to the daily chart, you're not seeing, the dollar's been going higher quite a bit, but Bitcoin's not going lower in the bigger time frame. And the positive to that, I don't think it's manipulation. I think it's a combination of, number one, you do see a little accumulation probably by smart money here. Number two, I do think that with all the currency issues going on, so we see the dollar. I mean, look at some of these charts. Let's go back to charts. Like, let's look at the USD JPY. I mean, look at this move up in the dollar yen. So you have that. Then you have the Bank of England already intervening because the pound is collapsing. Then you have the euro, which is now below par with the dollar. And I really think that some of these other citizens of these countries are probably putting a little bit of money into Bitcoin to try to protect themselves from what's going on with the dollar and their own currency. So I think there's a combination, but either way, it's a really healthy thing for Bitcoin to do, right? I love when Bitcoin starts to behave abnormally from what we're used to, and that's what we've seen on the daily chart recently. Yeah, so I'm kind of in the camp where I still am thinking we have a near-term pump, right? So I do think that complacency is there. I think there's a lot of bears out there in Bitcoin and crypto land. And so for me, looking at the charts, it also confirms it. In fact, let's bring up a chart right now so we can take a look. So what we basically have is this beautiful wedge pattern, right? You take the highs going back to May, it connects perfectly to the high in August, which then connects perfectly to September, and then all the way through here. And then same thing from the June low, you can kind of connect these lows. Now, what you're seeing here in the near term is this hammering on this resistance line. And I'm in the camp that I do think eventually we're going to break through this, which will give us a near term, and I stress near term, but a near term pop, potentially as high as 20,000. The reason I'm getting 25,000, the reason I'm getting 25 is basically by taking a parallel from these lows and stretching it up, and basically looking like this would be the upper range of that parallel line connected through this point here. So I think that's a possibility. I think that would get a lot of people very, very bullish. But one of the things we have to recognize is that this, and even a pop to 25,000, it's still inside of a macro bearish pattern, right? So you have the down move here, all inside bar action, even up to here, and therefore my midterm is still for further downside. So I'm near-term bullish, midterm still bearish. I still don't think we have a bottom in Bitcoin yet. Yeah, so I understand the midterms angle and the Fed angle right there, but really if we look at the chart, what's so interesting is that the wedge pattern ends, and this is where the point is, right around the October 29th-ish area. What that tells me is that you're going to either get a breakout or a breakdown between now and then, right? I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or if it's going to be on the 29th, but price is going to be forced out of this wedge pattern. And usually what we see, especially following these really quiet periods in any asset, is that when you get that break, it's explosive. So again, you know, my guess is we actually see the beginning of the move before the Fed and before the midterms. Whether or not it continues in that direction when we get the Fed in the midterms, that's another story. But I think it actually will happen probably in the next week, as we see here by the 29th. No, I was just going to say, and you're 100% right. I mean, it's a tricky scenario, right? Because you have certain things that are going to come up with the Federal Reserve. So number one is they're going to at some point stop hiking, and that's going to be that first pivot. But stopping hiking and keeping interest rates, let's say the Fed funds rate is at 4% at that point, that doesn't equate to printing money again. It's just they stopped raising. So that's kind of that first pivot. Then the next pivot would be when the economy really starts getting into a bad recession. They'll start dropping rates, which does increase liquidity in the system, but it's not quantitative easing yet, right? And so then you have that final one, which I do think would create that bull market again for sure, which is where they actually start quantitative easing again. So there's kind of like a three-step to the Fed, turning things around, which then would create that bull market. And by the way, I don't necessarily think Bitcoin needs that to have a bull market. It's just really, really helpful. Yeah, so believe it or not, so I was originally in the 12. Well, once we got to 20, I said, okay, now 12 to 13,000 is my upside, my high end target. Now everyone's saying that, and that makes me nervous. I'm like, okay, it's either not going to get there or it's going below. I'm in the camp that it probably goes below. And so interestingly enough, I'll show you where my current kind of zone will be, and it is below 10,000. So certainly I'm still a buyer below 10,000. But let's take a look. Let's do a trend line here. And if we go to our weekly chart and we go back here, so let's take a look here, right? So what if we take just before the first bull run in 2017, we put a little trend line and we connect it through this low, all the way through, but to me, it's a no-brainer that you got to go below the June low. I mean, you have to wash out those people. Think of all the stops that have been put there from all the people that have been buying here. And again, when you see this sideways action, what that tells you is that there's an equal amount of buyers and sellers. That's why price is going sideways. So all those buyers probably have their stop right below the June low, and just the way markets work, they're going to want to wash those people out. So I do think it'll go below. Again, for me, I think this will be a longer cycle than the normal 4-year cycle of bear markets, mainly because the Fed's not here to save us, right? And again, so by the way, is that just not I mean, this is so weird how crypto in general hates the Fed. They're like, screw the Fed, but then we kind of rely on the Fed to print money so that crypto goes up. I mean, it's just so weird.
Yeah, it's like you can't make it. It's almost like it's written in a script.
Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship, right? It's like you hate the Fed, but you secretly love them. It's like, this period that we're going through is very, very similar to 2018, right? So let me go back in my chart, and actually I'll show my screen, and we'll try to just take a quick look at that. So bear with me as we go back. So basically, we had this long period in 2018 from September all the way to November, right? So that was about 2 months of sideways, very tight. Look at how tight these bars were right here. And what we ended up seeing was a little bit of a dip, then a rally up, but then ultimately a big rollover. And Bitcoin actually lost 50% of its value. It went from about 6,000 and change all the way down to about 3,000 and change. So it's very possible this could be what we're kind of in right now. And so I do think I agree with you. What you said earlier is that if we do get that pop, for me at least, I'll be looking to take profits into that, expecting that at some point we will have that bigger rollover. The positive about it is that was the final rollover to the low before we started to move up. So maybe that would be the final drop. Interestingly enough, if you take 50% off of Bitcoin right now, it puts you just below 10,000 as well. So kind of interesting how that all comes together there.